unique Western experience based on its own philosophical traditions, based on its own, say, customs, norms, and the interaction of the people there. A response to a set of problems and concerns peculiar to Europe. From there emerged the concept of state, concept of nation, including today's the much talked about so-called multiculturalism and secularism and whatnot. If nothing could be universal, if the so-called universal doesn't have an element of which is called universal of each particular culture or civilization. When each civilization slash culture has something, an element which is universally acceptable, applicable. We call it universal only if it incorporates the universal component of each particular. Unfortunately, social science, as it's been taught to us, is not universal. So then the problem comes here. How do you look at, how do you study your society? A social problems, economic problem, political problem, through these lenses imported from the West. I get your point. So obviously your entire study would be narrower, or you unconsciously try to impose the Western model on a society where you find a complete mismatch. So you have the methodological limitation because you have the tendency of imposing things which is imported from the West on the surrounding, on the condition where the things are quite unique to itself, quite peculiar. So the problem is, but then how to solve it? None of us ever thought about it. The purpose of this imposition of the West imported model, paradigms, and what do you call this, practices, all intended to project Europe as superior. It's a kind of what I call, and we have accepted the superiority of the Europe because we are colonized for a long time. So during this entire period of colonization, most of us simply accepted it without even questioning it. Right from the 19th century onwards, the Mercurian education system introduced in Europe, in India, and we accepted uncritically. And this, and even in post-independence periods, the colonial consciousness persisted. What is the colonial consciousness? During the colonial period, the way your country was portrayed, presented, the way the narrative developed, we accepted it for a long time, even after the independence. The result is, we have begun to reify, or in a way institutionalize, the ideas, the concept borrowed from the West, which underestimate our contribution, our peculiarity, and our uniqueness, even our contribution to civilization development. So, how does it happen? First of all, because I have limited time, so I would actually explain to it my graphs here. It's difficult to redefine, for example, terminology like state. If you read the literature coming from the West, and most of us accepted it, they say, for example, the leading proponent of the global capitalist theory, Immanuel Wallenstein, you read his book, he say, does India exist? He said the core idea of India was imposed on the people to justify, with a specific objective of justifying the post-independent political entity called India. Do we agree with this? Do we agree with this particular narrative that India never existed? Then look at the Clifford Bridge, the title of the book. New state and old societies. I underline old. Do you think we never had the experience of a state in Mahajanapadas? And look at this this so-called very famous subaltern studies. What do the proponent of subaltern studies say? What they argue? India never had experience of a state. Hence, post-independent India resembles the colonial India. Is it true historically? No wonder most of them decide to revisit their own thesis about India, including Path, etc. So what I'm saying here, why this? It's precisely because what I call this terminological enframing. The scholar's mind is enframed intentionally by the colonizers to instill a sense of inferiority so that they would bow down to the colonial powers, and the power visible, noticeable everywhere, all aspects of the day-to-day life. Your mind is colonized and framed in the colonial mold, which has restricted, which has defined the parameters, the disciplinary boundaries beyond which you cannot think, you cannot visualize, you cannot imagine based on your own experience as an Indian, as a Bharatiya. Have you ever thought about it? What is the meaning of India? Could anybody say this? There's a colonial description of this entity called India. It's a meaningless terminology, which replaced Bharat, which has specific meaning. Those of you know Sanskrit a little bit. What is approximately to knowledge society? Bharatiyas are not believers. They are seekers of knowledge. I can just go on giving examples. Yes, the so-called secularism. What do you mean secularism? Where did it emerge? In a different context in Europe. So you can't look at this Sanatanis as a secular and non-secular. They're born secular. That's their problem. And they resolved it by separating the realm of state from the church. We don't have to do it. Our experience, our historical experience is quite unique, quite different. So I'm just showing certain examples to think about. So is the so-called multiculturalism, quote unquote, which has begun in 1993 in the wake of the bloody disintegration of former Yugoslavia, Republic of Yugoslavia. Because there's a real problem facing the West European countries, particularly Germany and France. They talked about the multiculturalism. Many of us are born in multicultural meadow. We don't have to learn what multiculturalism is. So that's kind of what I'm saying. Look at the mismatch. But then why this mismatch? The enters conceptually, theoretically, methodologically, epistemologically. All these parameters drawn by the Western scholar, Western scholarship inspired Indian scholars. The result is we can't think about the issue, about the concept beyond this. I get your point. And that requires a huge collective efforts to base our own knowledge production based on our own experience, philosophical traditions, okay, and your own interpretation of scriptures. I tell you how it happens. Second part of my lecture will be, see, hermeneutically, you'll find the two types of narratives available to us in the public space. One called the public narrative, second the personal narrative. How we accept this kind of narratives? Narrative on India as a secular state, India as, so-called socialist state, India is this and that. How we accept it? The public narrative is something which is originally developed in the academic institution, and the anti-narrative of period have repeated. Many of us subscribe to or allow the narrative to guide our behavior. When this particular narrative is repeated again and again, you'll find it gets institutionalized, and narratives become what is called the master narrative or the meta-narrative. So, from that meta-narrative, we have different branches coming out, but all, head towards this meta-narrative, lead towards the master narrative. This is what the idea of India is. But then, public narrative is something different, which is very important. I'm just throwing it up for you to explore it. Public narrative basically relates to your personal story, your personal experience and the interaction in the world around you. And the personal narrative is often neglected in Indian context by social scientists. Not necessarily the society looks at the marginalized section of society the way the master narratives elaborates. You have exception based on the individual narratives of the people or the individual belonging to marginalized community or section of society, which may point to different interpretation. That's basically talking about harmonious relationship among different sections of society, which is simply set aside. So what is important here is to collect these personal narratives. People have gone through it. People have their own story to tell. I think that should be totally distinct, different from the way their story has been written by others. The time has come for the subject to speak up. The subject is no longer an object of study. Here the subject has begun to speak up, to tell the world about his or her own narratives and her story. I think you have a different picture altogether, contrary to this narrative that the public, the educational institutions are presented through the textbook, through the lecture, through the articles, so-called research article, and the books. You have a different picture altogether. So what I'm saying here is, the time has come for us. It's simply beyond deconstruction of narratives. I'm not talking about the deconstruction of the narrative and then they move on to reconstruction. What I'm trying to highlight here is a huge challenge, I understand that. But nevertheless, I would like to mention before you the things, the political situation fortunately has changed in the country. I stand up to say whatever I feel like. I couldn't speak out. I'm not saying we lived in a stifling, academically, intellectually stifling atmosphere, but nevertheless, we lived in a period where we used to feel a little constricted expression of our ideas, hinting at the existence of an alternative perspective and approach. But we can today, given this changed socio-political context, pull up our resources and explore an alternative perspective in social science, rather than simply or heavily relying on the traditional methods of research. That's beyond simply deductive or inductive method or interpretivist methods. We have to first of all think of an approach which is drawn on our own experiences, history, social peculiarity. I think this should definitely help facilitate a qualitatively different research output. And that also in the long run, through your teaching and the communication, hopefully, would change the mental makeup of the younger generation about their own country, about the country's history and peculiar culture, which perhaps have a message, I'm saying perhaps, arguably, message not for a particular sector community, for entire mankind, well encapsulated in the very popular saying, Sarvavantu Sukhina Sarveshantu Nirama. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Professor Mahapatra. We would have been really happy if you had taken the full session that we proposed. But anyways, it was. It's a great honor for me to propose the vote of thanks for the inaugural session of this faculty development program with Professor N.V. Varghese, Vice Chancellor NIPA, as our chief guest, Professor Ashwani Mahapatra as our guest of honor, Professor A.K. Bakshi and Dr. Vimal Rar as our special guests, and very importantly, Professor Veera Gupta as the coordinator of the program from NIPA. I must thank Professor Varghese for his very engaging and enlightening inaugural address, which has been a very pertinent discussion in the context of this FTP on pedagogical and research possibilities in higher education. Sir, your chronological and multi-nation approach towards developments and trends in higher education has been very informative and lucid. I must appreciate your subtle articulation of the changing dynamics of knowledge production and knowledge dissemination across countries. Again, thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation to be the chief guest of the program. I must also thank Professor Ashwini Mahapatra for gracing the event and for focusing on the response, for giving a focused response to possibilities in research in social sciences. This program would not have been materialized without the support and interest of Professor Veera Gupta from NEPA, who has been constantly engaged with the conceptualization of the entire framework of this FDP. When I personally approached her, I have been in touch with her many times in the last 2 months when we had started planning for this program, for many requests and discussions about the logistics and sessions, etc. I must thank you, ma'am, for being there all the time for us in the planning of this program. I must also take the opportunity to thank Professor A.K. Bakshi for accepting our invitation to be part of this faculty development program as our collaborator, and for agreeing to take sessions on the emerging possibilities of online teaching learning methods. Professor Vimal Rar, Joint Director of GAD TLC, has also been immensely supportive of our initiative. I understand that she at the moment is very hard pressed for time because GAD TLC is also organizing a 1-month faculty induction program from 26th onwards. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much for your support. Most importantly, I would like to thank our principal, Professor Ravi Narayankar, whose vision, direction and support have been instrumental in the organization of this program, as well as in other national and international events that we have been organizing in the recent times. So I must acknowledge that it is due to your vision that we are able to take this pioneer step and organize this first faculty development programs in many more to come. Last but not the least, I must thank the entire Academic Affairs Committee with Dr. Komila Suri, Dr. Sunaina, Dr. Neelam, Dr. Sushil, Dr. Anuj, Dr. Rahul and Dr. Neha Botra for working tirelessly on the logistics, session plans and other things to make this program a reality. I must also thank the IQAC convener, Dr. Alka Sharma and other IQAC members for their involvement and support. Lastly, I must also thank all the participants from different colleges and universities who have come to take part in this FDP and have supported this initiative. I am hopeful that you all will have a very fruitful engagement in the coming 1 week with sessions focusing on many areas of concern in the teaching and learning in higher education institutions. Lastly, I must also thank the gardeners of our college for enhancing the visuals of this room from plants from our own nursery. Thank you all very much, as well as the non-teaching staff of our college who have supported and helped us throughout the organization of this program. Thank you all. Now I must request all the participants and the guests for a group photo, and afterwards we'll proceed for tea downstairs. Thank you. And we would be reassembling in the boardroom downstairs for the post-lunch session, but after tea we have to assemble back here.
लेफ्ट राइट सेंटर ले लीजिए मिक्स करो वो पैनोरामिक व्यू हो जाएगा
Thank you, sir.
It's a great honor to have you all, sir. Hi, sir.
I'd like to welcome all of you back on tea.
We now have Dr. Vimal and Professor Bakshi with us for this session. A good brief and elegant one was given by Dr. Kusha about Professor Bakshi, so I would like to now continue with Dr. Vimal's manner. Dr. Vimal Ral is a coordinator, National Resource Center of Chemistry, MHRD, Joint Director, GAD, TLC of MHRD. Dr. Vivarar is a senior chemistry faculty at SGTV Khalsa College, University of Delhi. She has her research interest in organic chemistry, e-learning, and forensic science. She has to her credit many research papers, patent books, presentations, and invited talks at national and international forums. Apart from her teaching responsibilities, she is also managing 3 centers working in the field of e-learning at the national level. She is the coordinator of the prestigious National Resource Center of Chemistry of MHRD for development of annual online refresher courses at MOOCs for all chemistry teachers of India. She is Joint Director of Guru Angad Dev Teaching Learning Center, GAD, TLC of MHRD, Government of India, and Deputy Director of Center for E-Learning, SGTV, Khalsa College. The Center for E-Learning has successfully completed development of around 3,200 modules in 4 quadrant form under E-PG Pathshala projects for 6 subjects. 42 MOOCs have been developed for the Swayam portal of Government of India, and more are being developed under her administrative and technical guidance. She has developed around 300 modules as author in chemistry and forensic science for undergraduate and postgraduate level, and has developed 8 MOOCs in chemistry as PI, including the ongoing first online refresher course in chemistry for higher education faculty under the National Resource Center of Chemistry of MHRD. She has conducted training of more than 10,000 teachers from schools and higher education till now through various seminars, training programs, workshops in e-learning, pedagogy, and ICT skills. She has also contributed in the curriculum